Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the first SpedNet webinar of the year. We're so pleased to have you joining us. I'm Eve Kessler, co-founder and executive director of SpedNet, and Carolina Corrigan, our co-president, will be hosting this webinar. SpedNet was created over 20 years ago as a nonprofit to educate and empower parents of students with special needs to become their children's best advocates. In addition to our webinars and presentations, we have a terrific and easily accessible website with videos of all our presentations and webinars sorted by topic and speaker, as well as related articles and materials. We have published an excellent interactive guide to special services, bringing knowledge to the table, how to be an effective advocate for your child, free and on the website, and with paperbacks available for purchase. This year, the Connecticut State Department of Ed has implemented a new IEP form and data collection system tied to the Common Core standards. Today, Gerri Fleming, a special education advocate, and Sharon Golder, a special educator, will discuss Connecticut's Common Core standards and explain how to use them to create specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, known as SMART goals for your children's IEPs. As a follow-up to today's webinar on Wednesday, October 19th, attorneys Jeff Forte and Jill Hornig will discuss making sense of Connecticut's new IEP page by page. Gerri Fleming began her career as a high school history teacher in New York City. After moving to Connecticut and starting a family, she opened a special education advocacy practice representing students with disabilities. She's a graduate of SEAT, a year-long U.S. Department of Ed funded program in special education law and advocacy. Gerri currently serves as the transition consultant for Westport College Prep. Sharon Golder has many years of experience as a certified special education teacher and as a consultant supporting students with disabilities, their families, and school personnel. As owner of Educational Consultants of Connecticut, she has provided training and technical assistance to over 75 school districts on behalf of students with a wide range of disabilities. Gerri and Sharon will be answering questions after the presentation. The best way to ask your questions is to type them into the Q&A. Please do not use the chat. Please remember that all information from today's webinar is for educational purposes only. Thank you, Gerri and Sharon, and we'll begin with Gerri.
Okay. First, let me apologize in advance. My portion of this PowerPoint presentation is dry but necessary. IDEA, the law that underpins special education, is a very process-oriented law. I'm going to start by sharing the PowerPoint, which, gosh golly, where did it go? My apologies. 1 second, bear with me. Alrighty, I'm so sorry. Everything is just disappearing from my screen as I need it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we are going to use the Common Core state standards to improve your IEP. So why this presentation? Parents often come to me and they ask, they'll say to me, my kid needs more speech, my kid needs more reading. And when they ask for that at a PPT meeting, the school team responds with, we feel we have enough service to get through the goals and objectives that we've created. And so the issue is you need to reframe it. You need to say, instead of I need more of this, you need to identify what areas of concern or deficits your child has. Under IDEA, we've got some really wonderful language in the findings and purposes. All laws will have findings and purposes to sort of explain why the law is necessary, what they found when they researched it, and why we have this law to begin with. So when you look at the findings of IDEA, there's this really beautiful language. Disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the rights of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. And other things that they find, this is just the first one, they found that research-based methodologies are not being used in schools. IDEA hasn't lived up to the expectations. And, they just want to find out why that is. And when they did their research, they found, a few things, that expectations weren't very high for kids with disabilities in school, that they could use more research-based methodologies, and the segregation of kids with disability. And that's why this first piece, the first one, that disability is a natural part of human experience, is given that prominent position. The purposes of this title are basically to prepare kids for adulthood. They are to get an appropriate program that meets their unique needs. And the point of this is further education, employment, and independent living. I often would tell my clients that if you can tie a goal or an objective or an area that you want to any of these purposes, further education, employment, and independent living, you are probably on pretty safe ground. So, just as an example, I had a student once, he needed to take driver's ed, but we weren't sure if he was actually, ready for that. And there is a particular evaluation that is given by Easter Seals where you can, determine, does the kid have, appropriate attention, the fine motor and gross motor skills, et cetera, to be a driver. And I asked for this test in a PPT, and the school said, well, we don't give driver's ed, so we don't have to teach your child how to drive. And I said, I'm not asking for driver's ed. What I'm asking for is an evaluation to see if he can drive. And then I tied it to employment and independent living. I said, it was very hard for me to find a parking spot in the parking lot this morning as I, tried to get to this PPT, because everyone took their car. We live in Connecticut. There's not a whole lot of public transportation. We need cars. We need to be able to drive. If we want this kid to work, this is something that he's going to need. Otherwise, it's going to be a barrier to him to be employed. And, also for independent living. We don't take the bus or a train to buy our groceries. We need our groceries, in a car, in the trunk of the car. So if you can tie something to these three purposes, you're on pretty solid ground. The next slide. Like I said, IDEA is very process oriented. So when you ask for something at a PPT, you've got to make sure you're asking for it at the right portion of the meeting. The way a child is initially made eligible under IDEA is you are comprehensively evaluated in all areas of suspected disability. When you are at that initial meeting for evaluations, and even when you're at the triennial portion, every 3 years, a student has to be reevaluated to see if eligibility is still appropriate. You can be evaluated more often if the PPT and you agree. But when you are in that planning PPT where you're planning the evaluation, you need to speak up. You need to talk about any issues that you think your child has, whether it's reading or writing or math, if it's memory, if it's attention, social skills, executive function, you've got to speak up. This will give you the more robust, the more well-rounded evaluation. and then more things will be uncovered if they exist. But if you don't test, you're not going to get the appropriate IEP because things will be missed. Eligibility for special ed is determined by the IEP team, or the PPT as we call it in Connecticut. Schools do not diagnose. You should know that. If you think your child has dyslexia, the school is not going to diagnose your student, your child, with dyslexia. You may be eligible under that category based on the way the evaluations have presented, the results of the evaluations have presented, but you should know that. So if you're looking for a diagnosis, that's an entirely different, a different situation. When you do the evaluation, when you're at the PPT, the evaluation results are presented. And if your child is eligible, you would want to use those evaluation results as well as the performance, your child's school performance and homework performance. It's what you see. And certainly during COVID, we all saw a lot of how our kids perform in school. You want to put those things down in a document for your own purposes, all of your concerns and needs, and where you see that your child may need some appropriate help to sort of catch up to everyone else. Once that happens, once you have your concerns and needs, and Sharon's going to talk more fully about this, the IEP is then drafted. Each area of concern gets either a goal or an objective to address that area. And then based on the level of need, the amount of service and the intensity of that service is then determined. Okay, next slide. So how do you know if your child is demonstrating the age-appropriate skills? Well, I've done a few links here for you. One takes you to the CDC website. This is for younger children, and you can see the developmental milestones. They will give you age ranges. Basically, this is when your child should be doing X, and it might be jumping with 2 feet or alternating feet as you go up and down the stairs. So those are the kinds of things that you'll find on that website. ASHA, the American Speech and Hearing Association, also has a developmental chart for speech, language, hearing, listening, and communication. And that is also done in age and grade ranges, so you have a sense. Look at the website. I believe the ASHA website says that your child is expected to have these skills by the end of age 5 or the end of age 4, whereas the CDC website will say by the time your child is 2, he or she should be doing X. So you'll just want to make sure that you're not expecting your child to do something just because they turned 4 or 5, when the guidelines actually state something different. The next area that I've given is the Common Core state standards. I'm going to try sharing. I tried to get onto the National Common Core state standards this morning, and their website is down. So imagine my anxiety levels. The one thing I was going to show you. So we're going to go, I'm going to share, I'm going to stop sharing this and try sharing something else. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Nope, that's not there either. Okay. I'm just gonna go back. All right. I'm just not having a good time with these Common Core state standards. Anyway, if you look at what you will do when you click on these, it will give you the different Common Core state standards for reading, writing, and math based on age or grade levels, actually. And it will say things like, capitalizes the first letter of a sentence. I believe that's a first grade skill. And so that at the end of first grade, your child should be capitalizing and punctuating the end of a sentence. It will give the skills for phonics, what your child should be able to read by the end of first grade. And it will break it down into things like, single syllable words with short vowels like cat and dog, as well as words with silent E that make the short vowel long. So those are the kinds of things that you can very specifically look at to determine, is my child on grade level? All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay. Common Core. So why do we have the Common Core? Prior to the Common Core, we had the Connecticut frameworks. And ultimately, this wasn't just a Connecticut problem, but this was a United States problem that we were performing really below many nations on international tests of education. And what they were finding in many of high school frameworks or curricular guides was that they were graduating with 10th grade skills, unprepared for college, unprepared for career. When I believe the statistic was about 30% of all kids who go to college need to take remedial classes. That's pretty stunning. College is so expensive right now. There are some, private colleges costing $60,000 to $80,000 a year. And if you have to take a remedial class, you, the parent, are paying for it. Or if your child has to take the remedial class, you're paying for it, and your child is not receiving any credit that will go towards, graduation and a diploma, a degree. So this was a really big problem. So the Common Core was basically bringing it back to the basics, that we would have just a set of national standards. It is not a curriculum. It doesn't tell teachers how to teach. There are no lesson plans, but it says, we expect a kid to be able to capitalize the first letter of a sentence, capitalize proper nouns, things like that. It's just a series of guidelines of what should be included. The great thing about this is that it can inform us on what to include in an IEP. We have it written down that a first grader should know how to do this, or by the end of first grade. So if your second grader doesn't do this, then it's a good idea to put that particular standard on an IEP. So I am actually pretty much a fan of the Common Core. I know that I am in the minority, but it does give some very concrete examples of what should be done. And there's also an Appendix C that I gave you on the prior slide that says that actually provides you with a number of samples of writing from kids all across the United States at different grade levels. And you can take a look at that and see, is my kid writing along these lines? And if your child isn't, then you look to the writing standards under the Common Core to put those in as potential goals and or objectives. One last thing. We need our kids to be college and career ready. And college or something beyond high school, it doesn't necessarily have to be college, but something beyond high school, whether it's a certificate some sort of credential that says I've taken courses beyond high school is really, really important. We have an information economy. A 2016 Georgetown University study found that 99% of all jobs went to individuals with an education beyond a high school diploma. 99%. And so that means just 1%. If you had just a high school diploma, that meant only 1% of the jobs were open to you. 73% of all jobs went to people with a bachelor's degree or higher. So it is really hard to get a job in this information economy that we have if you don't have something that goes beyond the high school diploma. Okay, so the whole point of IDEA is that we are graduating students who are ready for adulthood. This is how the IDEA identify or defines transition services. It's supposed to be a coordinated set of activities, and it's supposed to be results oriented. And it's designed to get a child or a student ready for employment, further education, and independent living. We want to look beyond mere compliance. What do I mean by that? It says that it's supposed to be, the regulations or the policies, in states and across the nation will say it's got to be more than one goal. So what do? We do 2 goals. Well, that's mere compliance, because that to me isn't a coordinated set of activities designed in a results-oriented process. That's ticking a box. So we want these kids to be ready for further education, employment, and independent living. It has to be made more robust. It cannot be haphazard. I'll just give you some statistics just for those with autism who are made eligible under the autism category. In 2012, the National Longitudinal Transition Study was published, and it basically looked at kids with disabilities 8 years after graduating. So these were kids who graduated in 2004. And I looked at the autism category, and in the autism category, they had the worst outcomes in employment, the lowest rate of independent living, the lowest marriage rate, the lowest parenting rate, the lowest level of social engagement, and the highest rate of no engagement in any activity after high school of all the other disability categories under IDEA. Yet, 49.6% of the students with autism went on to post-secondary education, consisting either of a 2-year or a 4-year college. So despite the fact that they graduated, despite the fact that they went on to a 2 or a 4-year college, they didn't graduate. Only about 30% of them graduate, but they did manage to go, and it still wasn't enough. We need to consider things like the soft skills, like executive function, like social skills for our kids. And it needs to, a transition program needs to have real world experience. And so for that, we should be considering things like, let's try a college class while the student is still in high school or undergoing transition. Let's try a volunteer position, a job position, gainful employment, a part-time job for a kid after they're 16. The biggest predictor of employment after high school or college is the fact that you had a part-time job. This is for all kids, not just kids with disabilities. The biggest predictor of employment is that you had a part-time job while you were in high school. There are a lot of really excellent skills that you will learn in a part-time job. And it's low stakes. That's the other thing. You don't want your child's first job to be that one where they're putting out a resume, they've graduated from college, and they are, they get their first real adult sort of job. That is too high stakes, because if they don't know how to deal with work colleagues, don't have the self-advocacy skills to, ask for a raise or to get through an interview or any of those things, it just does not bode well for a successful, gainful employment history. Okay. Next slide. So as of July 1, 2022, we have a new IEP. What I like about the new IEP is that it places the concern or the need much closer to the goal. It's right above it. Whereas in the past, the IEP, you would find the present levels or the concerns put on pages 4 and 5, and then a couple of pages later on page 7, you'd find a goal and an objective. A lot of times there wasn't, people didn't understand that that's how you get to goals and objectives. And sometimes an objective wouldn't even be listed as a concern. So this just sort of marries the two in proximity, and it's so much easier to understand the IEP. The new IEP differentiates the academic from the functional. The academic goal areas, again, you can find those standards of, the expectations, grade level expectations, by looking at the Common Core. And for the functional goal areas, like communication, you can look at the ASHA, the American Speech and Hearing Association website. For the other areas, fine motor, behavior, gross motor, social emotional, et cetera, that you're either going to have to look at your child's behavior, how they perform, and the other area, the other place that might be helpful is the testing that's done. So if you think your child has issues with executive function, then you need to ask for that executive function testing when you're, way back at the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation, when you're in that phase of discussing how comprehensive the evaluation needs to be. And that's pretty much what I have. Now my colleague Sharon is going to show you how to apply all of this very dry, and again, I apologize, very dry information. But I hope that you see the value, even though it is kind of dry. She's going to show you how to apply it and get to the meat of creating that robust IEP. Thank you.
Okay. Someone please let me know if you can. I need to share this. So let me. Whoopsie. Excuse me. Oh dear. Okay, I lost my screen and I need to go back and find it. Maybe you could go to any questions that anybody might have at this point in the Q&A as I go look for this. I'm so sorry. Okay.
There's one question. Do you want to take that, Gerri? Do you see it?
I need to get out of Zoom. I have my apologies.
Lena, would you like to read that for Gerri?
Sure. Oh, what happened with Sharon? You there, Gerri?
Okay.
You want to unmute? Do you see it, or do you want me to read it?
The question is that the daughter, oh, it just went away. Daughter has Down syndrome, and I think she's being pulled out for reading. And I think the parent wants the daughter to stay in class to get the reading. Is that your understanding of it? To get the reading during the class? I'm sorry, it was.
Yeah, that would be my understanding.
So to me, what I would wonder is what reading program are they using in the classroom? Not a fan of Readers Writers Workshop. That's the program that comes out of Columbia University. And that it we only have 40% of our kids reading on grade level at this point. And that's pretty much nationwide. And that is the program that's used nationwide. So if your daughter was in class where that was being used, I would definitely want my kid taken out and given a program that was more appropriate. For somebody with Down syndrome, a lot of times you will get a program like EdMark. EdMark is a reading program that was initially developed for students who were deaf. So I don't think it's at all appropriate for somebody with Down syndrome. Somebody with Down syndrome has really good memory skills. So you want to use a program like a Wilson or a Foundations where they are taught the code, how to decode words. When you use a program like EdMark, it's a sight word program, so it's based purely on your memory, but you will never get beyond a second grade reading level because you memorize whole words. And to me, that's not progressing past second grade is entirely inappropriate. So whether your child should stay in the class or not would really be dependent upon what curricular program they were using in the classroom. So if it's a Wilson or a Foundations, I'd say great, definitely stay in the classroom. But if they're using a Readers Writers Workshop, then I'd say, and they're going to give Wilson or Foundations outside of the classroom in a smaller group, I would say go with that. Sorry, it's not an
It's
easy.
all right. It's there's another question. It's my understanding Common Core applications will not be introduced into the new IEP, so the 23-24 school year. Is that correct? That sounds not correct.
Not that to me, but the Common Core was approved by the state of Connecticut in 2012. So and we are allowed to have standards-based IEPs. That isn't anything I've heard. If you're hearing that at a PPT meeting, you ask them for the policy guidance where that is being stated or written.
Maybe I can clarify. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Sharon. Your turn.
Hi. Hello, I'm back.
Yeah,
I think that it's probably just more of a misinterpretation that, so the implementation just started July 1st, right? So we just started the new school year, and every new IEP will now become on the new CTSEDS state form, okay? You need time, districts need time to implement, and so we need to notate and use the standards, which I was going to just go over where that happens in my presentation. However, it's going to take, districts have a full year in order to implement this new IEP. And it's going to be organic, fluid, and organic, and districts are going to need to develop ways. For example, if you have a kindergartner and you're looking at that standard, the difference between where the child is in the standard, the gap is going to be smaller. The larger you, the farther in grade is more potential for the gap to be bigger. And so therefore, it needs a multidisciplinary team to look at the standards and the curriculum and what will be put in that IEP that year, and what standards and what deficits will be addressed. So I think that it's accurate that there is going to be a lot of slack in the first year, because my understanding and from what I can see, people are only learning exactly how to take a standard and identify where someone is in the standard. It's called sifting the standard. Think of flour sifting. If you were to sift flour, it's sifting the standard in order to identify what are the goals and associated objectives that are going to move that child forward on the standard and help them be able to better access the general ed curriculum. So that's how I would answer that. Can you see my screen share just so I know? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the core standard, but just like I just identified, that is new to this in terms of how you do it and what it looks like. And what we will share subsequent to this meeting is a case study that the state did do that goes through the entire process of evaluation materials, functional scores, standardized scores, triennial information, and goes through the whole process of present levels, real goals and objectives, real supports and services, real accommodations and modifications. So it goes soup to nuts, and that will be shared with you subsequently so that you can actually look for yourself. Gerri also has a link that you will be able to go to, open or cut and paste, so that you'll be able to go to the standards. But there's a lot of information. Another important point to clarify here is that the state is requiring that they are English language, ELA, math, and pre-K are the core curriculum standards. They're not behavior standards at this point in time. And so as Ms. Fleming pointed out, that in ASHA, if you go to that link, you will be able to see communication and functional, and certainly social behavioral. There is a lot of communication and functional goals. So you can go there and look, but the standards at this point in time that the state is going to require is that you notate the standard of which you then go and develop a goal. So part of, I'm going to go over just very briefly the new enhancements, because I know on October 19th, you're going to have a side-by-side comparison, but this will set you nicely up with background knowledge with how goals are developed. Prior to this, the flow of information is, in my opinion, really nice. There is a connection between the important salient pieces of the IEP plan piece that separates some of the procedural pieces out into different places so things don't get lost or muddied. They also align grade level standards. That's the first thing that you actually have to do. Okay. Briefly, most of you know what previously, and you're going to go over this October 9th, but this is the previous page of current level of performance. So you have your academic on the first page, then you start going into the functional. So what's different as well is the first page of the IEP is now we're now saying that we have two main domains. This previous page 4 is considered your academic, pre-academic cognitive domain. This page 5 is considered more functional. OT, PT, communication, speech and language, transition, and most importantly, behavioral and social as well. So these are different. Now, at the beginning of this, there was parental input and concerns, and you see how it is up top there. And by and large, districts have not done a wonderful job of soliciting information for that part, and is sometimes very disjointed. In the new IEP, it doesn't allow you to do that. So it's all part of the meeting. So this was the old IEP, and this was the old goal. It looks similar, but there are some very important changes to the old goal as well, which I will go over. All right. Present levels of academic achievement. Here, as Ms. Fleming had notated again, what is different is present for every annual goal area, say, for example, reading, behavior, math, those things you have present levels of performance right on the top of that annual goal for each one, not just for everything that you have to shift back and forth to. The next thing you need to do from there is you need to select the standards. So it prompts the special educator or team that are writing the goal for present level of performance. Along with present level of performance, it solicits parental input and, more importantly, student input separately. Before we asked for your input once, now the IEP is asking for it twice. Once, how are academics going? How is homework going? How is reading going? How is math going? How is science going? It's academic. It asks the student that same question. Then when it goes to the second domain, it asks it of functional, behavioral, executive function, OT, PT, etc. So it starts right there. You go into your present level, which was similar, and your concerns and needs, and your impact statement, which is, so on your present level of performance, there's not going to be a lot of standardized assessment information. There may be some very current information, but we're really looking at present levels in relationship to general education and core curriculum right now, and what the impact is. Then it goes into your annual goal, and you come up with an overriding goal statement, which I'll get into more information in a minute. And the goal statement follows a script, prompts with static text boxes and static language, and then it goes into short-term objectives, which does the same thing, identifies your core standards again, which ones you used, and then your related and supplementary services. So even though there is a separate page, which I'm not going to go into this in this presentation, although there is a separate page for accommodations and modifications, this actually at the bottom of it prompts to look at some of the specific, if any related services are involved, as well as any modifications and accommodations for that goal specifically, adult support, any of those things. So because of time, and I want to take questions as well, I'm going to go through this. I sort of spoke that there was academic and then now there's functional. So it's the same thing. There's the functional performance. So here is what I wanted to show you, okay? Which I sort of just referred to. So this is what the educators see when they're writing a goal. And they're going to see the present levels. They're going to solicit parental input on both academic and then separately now, because there's two domains, which we didn't spell that out before, functional performance. Then you're going to start with your goal area of which area are you choosing, academic or functional. And then the important piece of this is what they call the interface now, okay? So we've got for each goal now, not for all of them, present level of performance, strengths, your concerns and needs, and your impact statement. It allows you to add goals and your content standards. And when you get to standards, it gives you a prompt where there are different parts. There's like 6 different things you're able to check with ELA. So it could be reading fluency, it could be reading comprehension, it could be decoding, it could be written expression, and the standard category that you are addressing. So that's what I just went over here. So for ELA, they've got a category that you now have to add here. So we've added now foundational reading skills. It's our ELA standard 3, and it identifies 2 standards that were used to develop this goal. Now, what's different when you add the goal? What's different in order to get SMART goals and consistent goals, because if you've ever read goals from one district to another district, it's all over the place on how it is written, okay? So here it gives the educators text boxes and it gives them static areas of which to write, but it prompts them. So given one-on-one reading instruction in blending, student will blend such and such. So it goes from given, it could be assistive technology, it could be given instruction, you could be given a graphic organizer, you could be given all of those things, but all of those things need to be there because this is your condition. Then it goes into the student, in this case, Vaughn will, what is it that what skill is he actually performing and what does that look like? Then it goes into what extent, so with an annual goal, frequently it's 100% in mastery of the objectives. And that's what most people in Connecticut are putting these days, but it does allow that does not have to be the way the goal is measured for that evaluation progress monitoring. However, that's what a lot of people do. So then you've got your goal. So this is what our annual goal is. It's right on top of that are the standards. You've got your annual goal. From there, it talks about your evaluation monitoring. So from here, we can add objectives. And objectives follows really the same boxes and static text as well. So now we go into each objective. And given such and such, given given social skills, a functional goal, say functional, given social skills instruction on turn taking, the student will, and the evaluation criteria and method. And then by. So this allows, this is an important thing I wanted to highlight, this by piece. Previously, it was encouraged that this is for a year's time and you have this whole year to do this. This encourages scaffolding of objectives if you want to master objective and go on to another objective. This encourages people to do that by saying this will be mastered by November 11th, where the next one is going to be mastered by February 1st, etc. So it allows for that. So there we go. That's what it ends up looking like. And it gives an example of a whole objective. Given the use of a graphic organizer, Von for CT Falcon will identify 3 details from the narrative text and determine a negative or positive central idea as determined. So this is that piece. What does it look like? By completed work samples. So there is one other piece that I skipped over. I'm not exactly sure where it is, and it may come up on it. But there's a new progress monitoring that was not there before that says that this is how often this is going to be looked at. So prior to this, we reported on it. The rule is, the law is that we will report on progress with the same frequency that we report with their general ed peers, which usually means report cards. High school, it's 4, elementary is 2 or 3. Now it's got a place with each objective and each goal that actually looks at, you will look at this weekly, you will look at this bi-weekly, you will look at this monthly. So this separates out now where you're going to be now looking at data. If it's monthly, you're going to be able to look at October, November, December, when you look at that quarterly progress reporting. So that's a really important enhancement as well. And then lastly, with this goal is additional data assessment information. So frequently, I've seen before in the old way that we did present levels of performance, that there was all sorts of information on there, from standardized testing to parental permission to a grade to what they got on an assignment. Here, it separates out that triennial information and any information that is important to the goal, however, may not be specific to what we're looking at for that period of time on which you're measuring this year's goals. So it's information that you don't want to lose, and it's a place for this. And all of this flows nicely for every single goal. It will be there. So that is essentially the difference, and the pieces that that are important kind of to take away from today for the next time is that there are 2 domain areas of which parent and student input is collected. Before it was optional, or the parent agrees with the IEP, etc. Now there are 2 places instead of 1. We're breaking our current level of performance and our goals and objectives, and we're making it out loud that there is an achievement, cognitive, and there is a functional behavioral. Core standards are required, but at this point only for reading, writing, math, and early literacy. And that there is an easy editing system, but that's not so much for your information, as well as a parent portal, but you will learn about that in subsequent sessions. So I do apologize that I was not able to show you better how to actually take a standard and current level of performance and actually choose standards to do so. However, as we promised, there will be a subsequent link that has a whole case study that will show you the goals, the objectives, the standards. Ms. Fleming has provided with you the core curriculum standards as well. So I think we do have a few more minutes, or not many more minutes to talk. Are there any questions?
There are a few questions. One is, please spell out programs for reading.
Spell
Aside from
out.
Wilson. I think that they probably want a list of some reading programs aside from Wilson.
Well, it depends on if you're looking for decoding, but all the decoding is that it's the OG family, Wilson, Foundations, or in Gillingham, Spire,
Seeing Star,
Academic Failure, and
Linda Mood Bell.
Mood Bell.
Mhm.
I think we also have a follow-up question from the original question about the child with Down syndrome.
And just really
See
quickly,
that?
not yet. I just want to say one thing. If you want to look for, well-designed programs for reading, I would go to two websites. One would be the What Works Clearinghouse, and that's a federal website of peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed and studied evidence-based practices, basically, things that work. And the other one that I would go to would be the Florida Center for Reading Research, and they do a lot of work on reading programs. The follow-up to the other one.
It seems to, when their school programs have after school for reading, they won't let her in that program.
Oh, well, that would be a violation of your civil rights. Well, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's, any program that accepts federal money, and, basically when you're in a school, you are, the school is accepting federal money. They may not discriminate on the basis of disability as to who may attend. I would contact the CHRO or OCR, the Office of Civil Rights at the federal level, or CHRO, which is the Commission on Human Rights Organization. Is that the acronym?
Yeah,
Eve?
I think so.
Yeah, CHRO, Commission on Human Rights Organization.
I would also ask them to put that in writing.
Yeah, that's
So here's another
not good.
question. What are your thoughts on to whether or not prior written notice will be addressed at PPT meetings, given that prior written notice is now a separate document apart from the new IEP format?
I would ask for it immediately after the meeting. I would want it right then and there. It's separate. There's no reason to say no. And if they don't, because I would often ask for a prior written notice at PPT meetings, and they would say, you can get it in 10 days. And I would say, please put on prior written notice that I asked for prior written notice and you refused, because they're supposed to give you prior written notice right after a meeting. So I would just ask for it.
So here's another question. The current IEP lists are various IEP goals, objectives, evaluation procedures. The new IEP does not list the evaluation procedures. Will these be listed in the progress monitoring section of the new IEP as your drop-down box, or will it be omitted?
It will be part of it. If I omitted it from my presentation, that was in my era. There will be progress reporting how it is being evaluated. on
Okay.
the goal and objective.
We have a question. What does prior written notice mean?
So prior written notice is a section, used to be of the IEP, but it is basically a document that lists what may have been requested at the meeting and was either accepted by the school team or refused by the school team. What the law says is that you need to be given a cogent explanation, clearly transparent reason as to why something was either accepted or refused. So if I asked for more speech and it was refused, there needs to be an explanation as to why it was refused. Now, in the old IEP, they would tick a box and say, evaluation results support refusal. And oftentimes I would, be scratching my head because the evaluation results actually supported giving the service, not refusing the service. So I don't know what the new one will look like. Maybe Sharon, you can, chime in on that. But generally, it's what the team has agreed to do or chosen not to do, and that has to be clearly explained to you based on either evaluation or the educational performance.
It will still be there.
Okay.
It's just separated out.
Yeah, and that is very important. That is an incredibly important document in terms of, your legal rights. And if you ask for something and it isn't included on prior written notice, you need to write to them and say, I asked for X and it was not noted on prior written notice. Please resend prior written notice with my request in there and the reason why it was refused. Because if you ever go to due process and, the administrative law judge takes a look at the IEP and says, or takes a look at prior written notice and says, well, you didn't disagree, you didn't ask for anything, why are you here? And it's not that you didn't ask, it's that it wasn't noted. So you want to make sure that if it isn't recorded that you made a request, that you ask for it afterwards in writing, in an email, and say, please revise the prior written notice to reflect that I did ask for whatever you asked for, and it was refused.
So I think this is a follow-up. Can only the parent request prior written notice?
The student, if they're 18,
Yeah,
but the parent or guardian or, yes,
yeah.
they're 18.
I mean, the team members, like the school team members can, but, whoever is there on behalf of the child, the student, could ask for it. Not an advocate. An advocate could not ask for it. It is for the parent or guardian. The advocate does not represent, so, the advocate can advise, and I could say to my client, you want to ask for prior written notice. So that would be something that you would request at the meeting, though.
All right.
Just one quick thing. Attorney Ann Tremanis said that CHRO stands for Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities.
Opportunities.
Oh, no,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely call them. That's not allowed.
No.
No.
Well, as of now, I think we don't have any more questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of processing information right now.
So just so everyone knows out there that we will be sending out a copy of the recording to everyone. And after that, it'll be posted on our website, so you'll be able to access it anytime you like.
And we'll post your links, Gerri, with that.
Yes.
And hopefully they have the website up and running when people go there. And
Yeah.
Sharon, did you have any specific links or websites? Okay,
I have a sample to send you, the
right.
the
The case
sample
study.
evaluation and case study and IEP.
Okay, perfect.
Also, if you guys are registered and listening and want a copy of this, make sure you have subscribed to SpedNet's email list. So we can make sure we get you all this information. And with that, thank you so much, guys. This was super informative, super helpful. And we're looking forward to see you all at our next webinar.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank you
bye.
so much, Sharon and Gerri.
Thank you.